May the Most High bless you. May 8th, 1966.
Yes, sir, Soup. Thanks for that.
Yes,
Soup has
sir.
been blessing us from the very beginning, man. So that's always appreciated. But as we roll out here, we do have a special guest in the studio. There she is. Wave to the crowd. You are streaming out right now via Facebook Live. Virgin Island visual artist LaVaughn Belle. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. Good evening, everybody.
Thanks for coming to our studio tonight. We're in the green room here.
Thanks for the invitation.
You and I started chit-chatting a couple of weeks ago, and I said, wow, she's a perfect guest for our show. And so here you are, and you're I think many things kind of captured my attention with you, but you're a visual artist. And so kind of tell us, before we get into what that is, tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you're a Crucian, and you live here, and your studio's here, and, you know, you got a lot of ties here. But kind of take us back, what got you into art?
Okay. Well, I was actually originally born in Tobago.
Okay.
My mother is from Tobago. My father was from Barbados.
Okay.
And my father was a Moravian priest, and he met my mother in Tobago.
Okay.
And then they moved him to St. Thomas.
Okay.
So I was born there, and then when I was just 5 months, we moved to St. Thomas.
Okay.
And then when he switched to the Anglican Church, we moved to St. Croix. So, yeah. I'm a Virgin Islander.
Yes.
Mostly, I would consider myself mostly a Crucian, although I've lived in St. Thomas. And I went to St. Dunstan's Episcopal School and all the way through. And my art teacher actually was Leo Cartier. I don't know if you remember who he was.
Leo Cartier?
Cartier,
No.
yeah. He was African American actually, but he was a brilliant artist and an illustrator, and he always encouraged me to try to be an artist. And I remember always telling him, I wasn't, I went to Columbia University pre-med.
Pre-med? Wow.
But my junior year, I started taking painting classes again, and that's when I kind of rediscovered my interest. But as a junior, that's already kind of late
Okay.
to change a major. So I graduated. I did a program called Teach for America, which I always big up because it gave me the opportunity to figure out what I wanted to do. I got a chance to teach. I was teaching in the South Bronx for a while. It
In the
helped me to
Bronx.
pay off my pay off my student loans. That was great.
What grade you were teaching in college?
I was teaching middle school, the roughest age group to teach. Oh my God. Imagine, in the South Bronx teaching middle school. I could write a book.
Okay. I know you can.
It wasn't easy, but I loved it, but at the same time, and I was kind of trying to figure out how to be an artist. And ironically, a lot of people moved to New York to be an artist. I left New York to be an artist.
Okay.
So I left New York to come home as a base and a stability to really be able to focus myself and figure out how I wanted to do it. And as I did that the first few years, I realized that I wanted to have more of an education.
Yeah.
Because, you start to feel like, let's say you pick up an art magazine and you're looking at it, you're like, you feel so disconnected. So I realized, okay, I need to get more. If I really want to do this, I need to be more educated. So I didn't want to go back to the States. Art schools in the U.S. are, like $35,000 a year. And so I started thinking maybe I could do a degree in the Caribbean. And I started looking at schools, and Cuba, the school in Havana, caught my eye. El Instituto Superior de Arte. It caught my eye because it's a unique school. It has all the different disciplines on one campus.
Okay.
That rolled right off your tongue too, boy.
Yeah.
Can you say that again?
El Instituto Superior de Arte.
Oh my goodness. That was smooth.
Yeah. Well, I had to learn. I knew I knew a good amount of Spanish when I went, but I knew enough to be able to tell them I want to be a student. And I knew enough, but not. My first class there was in aesthetics.
Okay.
Philosophy of aesthetics. So it was hard. It was very hard. I mean, I was able to get into the school, but then, based on my portfolio, but then, all my classes were in Spanish. And my Spanish level was quite elementary.
Yeah.
So the first 6 months I didn't take two, I just took one class and really tried to get my Spanish up.
Okay.
And then, it was full-fledged after that first 6 months. And I did, like 2 years of classes, and then I had to do my thesis.
Okay.
So that was, you're there producing and trying to do an exhibition, and you have to write. So that was hard. I had to do my thesis and written in Spanish.
So you were in your 20s when this was happening?
I went when I was 26.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So I mean, what was the experience like living there?
Actually, I wrote a book about that.
Oh, really?
It's unpublished, but yeah, because it was so.
Because I imagine coming from here, from here, going there.
Yeah, right.
For example, coming from a very small island
Yeah.
that also has an ambiguous identity. You know, we have all these colonial changes, and then our relationship to the United States, and then going to a big island that has 11 million people, that has a very strong identity.
Roots
Yeah.
inside.
And I remember one of my classmates was like, "So you never had to fight for your freedom?" Or like she was like, "So you never had a war?" You know, because they had a war.
Yeah, of course.
You know,
yes.
so you know, when you think about that, I mean, of course we've fought. We you know, we had the fire bond, we've had emancipation, but we're still not independent.
Independent,
So
that's right.
that's such a big part of their
Psyche.
and their identity.
Yeah.
So she was, you know, it was interesting for them to meet me because most, you know, Marcus Garvey used to say Africa is for Africans. And I always tell people Cuba is for Cubans. The only reason they allow foreigners there is para el guaniquiqui, para el dinero.
Can you say that again, please?
So, you know, you're a tourist or
Yeah.
you do business.
Right.
And then, of course, we know we have some students, but a lot of people don't realize that when you hear people say they're studying in Cuba, they're not studying with Cubans, you know. They're studying in the international schools that are for foreigners. Like even the
Oh.
medical school, that's
Gotcha.
a separate, you're separate.
Separate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes,
And
yes.
so even for me, when I was first taking classes at the school, my classes were separate, and I didn't like that. I was like, wait, I came here to be with, so, you know, in the beginning, they had me with and I finally was able to get into the program and classes that I was integrated. But the foreigner students, they live in separate dorms. They eat in separate halls. It's so...
It's very separated.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
It
okay.
was, because we pay, they don't.
Yeah.
Cubans don't. So they give us a kind of a different, it was almost like an apartheid system. I really didn't like it.
Okay.
So I, you know, so I moved off campus because of that.
Okay.
I didn't, to just try to have a more, and I was, you know, I was 26,
Right.
27. I'd been through the dorm life. I didn't want to, you know,
Yes.
in the dorms, for example, they had tias, that women that would kind of be your guardian at the door to prevent other people. So it wasn't.
It wasn't.
Yeah, it was
you
a
had that
different-
freedom. You didn't have that freedom.
No. It was, yeah, it was very unique. And so I moved off campus and, you know, to just try to have a more integrated life. And because of that, a lot of Cubans are not used to seeing Caribbean people from, you know, if they have foreigners, they're from maybe Canada, Spain. So when they met me, they would always be like, "Tu no eres cubana?" They would kind of think, they would first assume I was Cuban, and then when they hear my accent, they would be like, "Oh, maybe she's from the Oriente," because the other part of Cuba where they had more Caribbean immigrants from like Jamaica, Haiti,
Oh, okay.
that worked in the sugar plantations, the accent is different.
Okay.
So they would think, "Oh, maybe she's from that part of
Oh,
Cuba," you know, because she don't sound like a Habanera. She doesn't,
Yeah.
because Havana has a
I-
very specific accent.
Accent, yeah. Yeah.
So, but then when they would realize that, no, I'd be like, "No, I'm not Cuban," and they would be so surprised.
Did they hear of the Virgin Islands? Did they know?
No,
of it?
most of them didn't really know about the Virgin Islands. I'd
Oh.
have to tell them, el este de Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
The east, of Puerto Rico.
yeah.
20 minutes
You know, some
away.
islands on the east, and they would go, "Oh, okay."
Yeah.
But they'd have no idea what.
Yeah.
Nah.
Did you meet anybody else there from the Virgin Islands?
Well, you know, I tried to meet, what is his name? The political prisoner, that one? The one
Labit.
that, yeah, I tried to, because, you know, when you're a foreigner, you start to meet other foreigners. So I
Yes,
remember
yes.
meeting one political prisoner, and I told her, "Hey, do you know about this one?" She said, "Yeah." She tried. 'Cause I said, "Oh, I would have loved to interview him or to do something."
Right.
And at that time, he did not interested at all. So
Oh,
now,
really?
of course, you've seen the
Yeah,
Skyjacker
they had,
documentary
Yeah.
documentary
about
right.
him, which I found so interesting. So okay, I guess now he was ready to talk.
Talk,
You know,
right.
she
Ready to
paid him
talk.
or what, but at the time he was, you know. And then I had other people tell me, "You don't want to find him, Milan. He's not somebody you want to."
Yeah.
preserve,"
I
you
mean,
know.
that
Yeah.
happened already.
Yeah.
What could happen?
No, but
now?
they just were like, leave that one alone.
So you're over there and you're taking classes
Yeah.
to be an artist, or
Yeah, I was taking.
But did you fine tune it? I mean, painting or
You know,
hand drawing or
I did a master's program, and the master's program, it was, okay, so most people, I don't know if they know how Cuban education is. Like, a lot of the communist countries, they find young people from when they're very young, the talent, and they put them in that track from young.
Okay.
So the people that I was in school with had been studying art since they were 7 years old.
Oh,
so they used to
okay.
look at me like, oh, you studied philosophy and sociology and English. They're like,
No.
I know art. Like, that's it. That's what they've done for their whole lives.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. So I did that program, but I did another program that really, I'll be honest, the program that I did, a lot of Cubans don't do that program because remember they've been doing art since they were 7.
Okay.
By the time you get to high school, you are probably the equivalent of a
Master,
master, right? I mean,
yes.
so when you do your undergrad college, that's like to launch you as a professional, and then you stop. There's very rarely, the only piece of time people really do a master's there is maybe if they want to try to teach or try to go to a university somewhere else because you need an advanced degree. So the program is really structured around those people. So it wasn't like it met very like in condensed sessions, and then I had a lot of time to just kind of do my work. So it might be like 4 months, very condensed meeting, and then or 3 months, and then I would, so it was different.
But how did it feel though? I mean, these kids are from 6, 7 years old in this program, and you're just coming in at your age. I mean, was there any kind of
absolutely? Oh my God,
complex going on, or did they make you feel like
they didn't try to? But okay, I mean, so Cubans have a kind. They're like Jamaicans, right? They're very
proud,
centered, and very proud. Yes. So they know that it's 11 million people. The people are there. Some of them are geniuses. Like I met people in the music department. I met this one woman. She told me, when she said her grandmother used to teach people piano in her house, and one day when she was 3, she just started playing. At 3, like she just
came. She was there every day.
And they were a lot, especially in the music school. You met a lot of people that were really like genius. Wow. In the art school, you met a lot of people that, I mean, the technical. I remember one day, I had to share a studio with 5 other people. No, it was 5 of us. So it was 4 other people. It was a big open space. And one day I was doing a painting and I wanted to do something with a spine, like a column, and I didn't have any reference material. Like I didn't have a book, or I couldn't picture or something, and I remember I asked, I said, hey, of any place I could find a medical book or some kind, I need to draw this thing. And he said, what do you want to draw? And I told him a spine. He said, Banga. And he sat there and he drew that spine like it was a medical illustration. And I looked at him like, because he was a photographer. I didn't even know he could draw. I mean, I was like, what? He used to, the kind of work he was doing too was so, I was like, how did you? And he said, and that's what he told me. He said, LaVaughn, when we were kids, we used to draw for like 4 or 5 hours a day. That's what we used to do. That's what we used to do. Yeah. He's like, this is like ingrained in us. We don't, I mean, that's what we did. So
but he was a photographer at the time?
He was a photographer. But they all went through the system where that's what the training was so unbelievable. So that felt, of course, it was a little intimidating. So I ended up actually taking a lot of private drawing and painting classes. Because remember, at my level, they done past that. They're not doing that. So I did take a lot of private classes to just feel a little caught up. Their focus really was on the intellectual. It was more on what is your art going to be about? Because they done mastered the technical part. So now it's like, what is your art about? So that's what they were, that's what most people were dealing with. It wasn't the technical part. And I had gone there thinking I would get a little bit more both. So I had to go outside the school actually and look for that. Because I didn't want to redo an undergrad. I wasn't going to high school. I mean, that's where they do it in high school. So that was, I had to kind of piece together a program. And then I ended up actually working in another woman, an artist, had created an alternative program called what was it called? La Cátedra de Arte Conducta, which is like performance art, but not how you think of performance. Like people think performance like music and dance. It's not that. It's thinking about art as gestures and everyday actions and symbolic actions, how that can be art. And that program actually really changed my life because it really made me think about art in a completely different way. And that was actually when I really started to get Cuban friends because I don't, when I remember how I told you how everything was still so segregated. Right. And when you meet Cubans, a lot of times, if you're a foreigner, it takes a while because they have grown up. I mean, when we think about the Cold War, they were always ingrained that foreigners, you don't really trust them. Yeah. So, or sometimes then you have people who, because you're a foreigner, they're looking for some way to... And I'll give you an example. Yeah, so I'll give you an example. When you're an artist, you're not going to... it's common that if you're in somebody's studio, you might ask, oh, how you did that? Like, what did you do to, that's common conversation. And I remember asking somebody, he was making these cages using wire and bottle caps, and I remember asking him how he did that, and he said, oh, I could teach you and he was telling me, $5 an hour, whatever it was. But that was so shocking to me, because I was saying, but that's how I was a foreigner.
Yeah.
So he, in their mind, there's a way
to get
money.
Yes.
Because, and I really couldn't blame them. When I started really seeing how when I made friends and I started seeing how they lived and the level of material lack that was there, it was like, okay, I get it now. I get why they do that. But it took a while. It took probably, like I said, my first year to really develop friends that were not people who were always trying to see what they could get from me.
So what kind of art, you say it was basically some kind of gesture. Can you give some kind of example of what that was like?
The gestures?
Yeah, the gestures.
Yeah, I can. So let's see. A project that I did was okay. So I did this one project that in Cuba at that time you could not own your own property. So what they call it was you could se permuta. So meaning if you let's say you divorce your husband, you guys are divorced, and so one house you now need to get 2 apartments. You could exchange that, but you couldn't sell it. There's no, at that time the government owns everything, so you have the right to live in the place, but you cannot sell it.
So you don't own it, basically.
No.
Yeah.
Not you do, but not. So it's not like the real estate, like you could say, I'm gonna sell this for whatever. So you would have to exchange.
Okay.
So I thought that was interesting, right? That's interesting for somebody coming from a capitalist society.
Yes.
And then in the city, you would see these little signs that would say "se permuta, do por uno," or they were trying to explain how 2 to 1 or 1 to 2, the opposite. Like you're marrying, so you have 2 apartments, and then you can combine it to get a bigger one. So there were all these little coded signs throughout the city that you would see.
Yeah.
And there was, of course, in a communist country, the underground black market is the
Yes,
market.
the
So,
market.
there were all this other stuff going on. So I found that interesting.
Was this in Havana?
And I lived in Havana.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, that happened everywhere, but I lived in Havana.
Okay.
So, the project that I created was called La Permuta, Se Permuta, and it was going to be in this market square. We were doing a group exhibition, and what I did around the neighborhood were what are called solares, which are, after the revolution, a lot of people from the countryside came into the big city mansions, and they just took them over, because a lot of those people left, went to Miami. And so you might have a house that had 5 people, a big town mansion in the city that now has 80 people living in it, and it was a maze, and everything was a maze except in the middle where the sun, that's what they call solan, the sun, was like a courtyard space in the middle, right. But it was a maze going in there. And so I interviewed hundreds of people in those surrounding neighborhood, and I asked them, I'm doing this project. They said una permuta, and they would like, who? And I said, no, not casas, not houses, but things, like a bartering system.
Yes.
So inside the exhibition space, I asked them to bring, I first said, well, what would you like to exchange it for what? And so we came up with items. And remember thinking about people who don't have a lot, what that means to exchange, right? The system of value, how they get to create it. Right. So we made the signs. I took pictures of the items. I took pictures of them with it. Okay. And then we put that up in the exhibition space. And then the day of the exhibition, they came with all their stuff. And at first it was kind of, it was kind of slow, because they thought I was going to be the mediator, and I was like, no, y'all, you guys figure it out. And it started slow, but then, oh my God, it was bustling and booming, and the kids loved it, because then they were like, oh, they got to get a new toy, and they would go back home and run back and bring more things, and it really highlighted how the Cuban society works, because that's how it is. It's a negotiation, a bartering, and exchange. So that's because that's art. I mean, it had. It was different from how people think about art, but it was a way to think about gesture in a symbolic way, and how it could speak and have a conversation about the society. So that's an example of some of the stuff.
Okay. So when were you over there? This was like in the 90s?
2000. This is in early 2000. So I was there from 2001 to 2005.
Okay. So you were there fairly recently in a sense. Yeah.
In 2018.
Yeah. Well, that's a place that I definitely would like to go to, at some point.
People ask me all the time, like, I'll tell you, so everybody can hear what my pet peeve is. Maybe they'll stop. I get asked probably on a regular basis about people who want to go to Cuba. And like they're asked, oh, and I said, you have to remember, I was not a tourist in Cuba.
Yeah.
I was a student.
Right.
I don't know, like,
the touristy
I
side
don't
of it.
know. And I also lived there almost, over 15 years ago now. So and then I don't like when people say things like, oh, I just want to go before it changes. And that is such a colonial attitude. Oh my God! Because I said like what?
Change
you
to
mean
what?
Like
Change
you want them to stay poor?
You understand me?
You want them to stay? I mean, what does that
What is
mean?
change? Yes, exactly.
And that you have the audacity to say you don't want them to change for you? So you want to see it in some kind of like frozen state from the 1950s?
Yeah.
That's what you want? Like that? It's so. I don't think people realize how. Colonial is very audacious to say that a society always changes, and I tell them all the time, it's always changing.
Change inevitable.
It changes inevitable. Why do you want it to freeze?
You understand?
For you.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So you said you're heading back over to Denmark here in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And this is because you have this big project. Can you talk about that?
So I'm doing a project with another artist from Denmark. Her name is Jeanette Ehlers, and we're doing a project called I Am Queen Mary.
Okay.
It's a collaborative public sculpture project that we've been working on. She and I together have been working on it for about a year, but the project really started, it started from a failure. You know how sometimes people say, like, sometimes the best things come out of failure?
That's right.
So there was a failed project before that, and that project was to think about, as the centennial was approaching in 2017, to think about an exhibition that was between the two warehouses, the one here and the one in Denmark.
Okay.
And that project fell apart. Part of that project was to also think about commissioning two artists to do some kind of memorial around the centennial. So that's how that happened. But the project fell apart because in Denmark, the warehouse used to operate as a museum, not for anything to do with the Danish West Indian history. It was it was called the Royal Cast Collection. It had all these Greek and antiquity sculptures in there. From some other person's collection that was just in there, and then that closed in the middle of our project. And then the person here that we were working with at the warehouse left that position. It still has not been filled. So you know how that goes. So we couldn't, the space over there was even though we could have maybe still done it, it just, the institutional support fell apart.
Right.
But the person who was organizing it, Hella Stenham, who had thought about the project, her, the impetus of asking us to do these monuments, thinking about a monument, we had already both come up with ideas. And so my idea was to think about, in my studio up on Frigat, some of the ruins of some of these buildings I would see these coral stones, and they're beautiful in and of themselves, but some of them were straight. And I remember sometimes I would sit outside and I'd look at them and I'd be like, wow, they look like almost sculptures. But then they were straight, and I was like, coral is not straight. And that's when I remembered that they had been manipulated. And then I had remembered a story, that it was the enslaved Africans that they would send into the ocean in the low tide to go and harvest the coral, and that's the foundation of a lot of the buildings in the town. But we don't see that out because we see the Danish brick on top.
Yeah.
So we tend to associate the buildings, we call them Danish, but then we forget that labor. Who built those buildings?
Who built the buildings, yeah.
And the coral, it was like visibilizing their invisible labor. So that's how I thought, I want to focus on that. Because also when you think about it, you only see the coral when the buildings are crumbling. So it was almost like the room, through the ruin of the top is when you start to see the real foundation. So my idea was to do a project where I did a prototype where I created a plinth, which is like the base part of a sculpture, kind of focus inverting. Instead of doing a sculpture, I said, let me do the base as the sculpture to focus on that foundational wealth of the society and whose labor.
Okay.
So that was my idea. Her idea was she had been doing some performances called Whip It Good. And she was dressing herself kind of like in an African-inspired garb, and then she was taking a big white canvas, and she would have black ash, and she would wrap it in a whip, and then whip it against the white canvas, this black ash. It was very dramatic piece, very controversial piece.
Why was it so controversial? I mean, was she offending any groups of people?
The action of whipping is kind of... I mean, it was... Because also the positionality of what does that mean for a black woman to be whipping onto a white canvas her blackness. It was complex, maybe is a better word. It was a complex piece. And it kind of inverting that power and
Yes,
talking
sir.
back to it in a way. And then it was kind of like, well, what does that mean? You know, it was also interesting. You know, for me as a Caribbean person, whipping is such a humiliating act
Action,
that of
yeah.
the slavery and colonial period. I couldn't really see us doing that, but when I spend more time in Denmark thinking about her as a black Dane, I got it. Because the level of negation and erasure in Denmark of people of color and the violence that just to live in that level of erasure, she had to
Whip it.
she
Yeah.
had to come with equally to whip
Yeah.
her
That's
essence
Yeah.
out into space. So that made sense for me when I spent more time there, her piece. And so her original idea was she had done a promo for her solo show, sitting with the whip, like sitting in the way that she had done the performance with the whip, and seated like Huey P. Newton from the Black Panther, that iconic image of him with the spear and the gun.
Yeah.
So she reinterpreted it as herself.
Yeah.
And then she thought, well, that would be an interesting way to reinterpret that image as Queen Mary. So that was her idea. And she was able to actually raise a good amount of money to do that, because Denmark is wealthy. They have many institutions that give to the arts. And then about a year and a half ago, she came to me and asked, you know, LaVaughn, why don't we combine the two pieces into one? Because it seems serendipitous now, because mine was a base, hers was a figure.
Yeah.
But that was, you know, we came up with two separate ideas.
Yeah.
And so she invited me to collaborate with her. And then the funny part is just how communication is, you know, she was recasting her image as Queen Mary. And so when she invited me to join her, she also meant to join her as Queen Mary. She meant both, not just combine our two projects, but to combine our two bodies. And that's so when she said to me, oh, okay, we're going to meet with the body scanner. I was like, body scanner? What?
Yeah.
What's she talking about?
And that's what she said. You remember you agreed to it? You said that you... And I said, oh my God, I didn't realize that that's
Exactly
also what
it
you
was,
were asking me to do. So when I was up in March, we did the body scanning. We both sat in that position, and then they scanned us.
Okay.
And then through the software, they combined us. So it's really interesting because it's based on a real woman, which was Mary Thomas, and then it's based on two real artists. But then it creates someone that's fictional, like you know, it's not a real person. It's a imaginative. Yeah.
So you're able to kind of see right away what it was going to look like?
No. When they did that, it took several weeks of rendering, because it may sound easy, but it's not hard. How you merge two people and make it look
Make it one.
it look one. It's not like a quick and just go pick. No.
It wasn't quite that?
It's like it's literally taking the arm and putting this one here, and then the face is a complete blend. But one foot is mine, the other foot is, it's like Frankenstein. Like this part is her, this part is me. It's an interesting blend.
Okay. And this hence gives us, you said there's two stories.
It is about, it's 2.5 stories.
It can be on the outside of a building or inside?
It's going to be on the outside.
Okay.
So what's also interesting about that space is that already there's a Michelangelo David. That's a very famous sculpture of David that's on the outside.
David,
And so
okay.
we're now on the other side, which also brings in another history as well,
Yes.
contesting.
Okay.
So it's a very site-specific intervention
Okay.
into that space. So we're on the opposite end.
Yeah.
And,
when you say 2.5 stories, because there's a floor above where we are here, so this is a pretty kind of a huge.
And it's seated. Remember, she's
sitting.
So it's even
Down,
more. So even though David is standing, and we're just like maybe a foot a little below him, our girth is bigger because
wider.
we're seated.
Yeah.
So we'll look way bigger than him, even though we're matching his height.
Yeah.
Right.
So is this going to be? Is it in a structure? And is it going to be rolled out to its location, or?
Oh my gosh, it's being manufactured in a factory called the Wow Factory. They do a lot of work with it's made out of polystyrene.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we would love to have a bronze, but to do a bronze sculpture like that is probably $1 million or something. It's a lot of money. So we're starting off with polystyrene, which is it's actually a pretty impenetrable material as well, especially when it's coated. And then the base is coral stones that imported from Denmark.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a lot. It was a lot of it was a lot to do that. It took about 3 months for the coral stones to arrive. That's what delayed the project also a little bit, because they didn't get there in time. We wanted to do it first on the Firebond Day, which was October 1st.
Okay.
So we moved it to now the end of the centennial year. So it's going to be March 31st, 2018, which is kind of really the full
year. Right.
And it's good because it's a way to extend the conversation about what the centennial is.
Right.
Okay.
And as opposed to just, it's over. It's about, like, let's talk about what's next.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. And so the official unveiling is March 31st.
Yeah.
And you're going over for that. And
yeah. And you know what else is interesting? It's Easter. That's Easter weekend. So to me, it's also really interesting because it's a renewal. Easter really is a renewal celebration.
Yeah.
And so I think it's very fitting to that, you know, it's something to, I mean, we've been through so much through this project, right?
Okay.
When you think about what does that mean to embody a heroine?
Yeah.
You know, because we've had some people kind of question, like, you're putting your image as Queen Mary, because Queen Mary is like our most sacred heroine. So what is, it was almost sacrilegious, like, you gonna be Queen Mary?
Yeah.
Why you, right? Like, what does that mean as artists to refashion themselves?
But can you tell by looking at it, does it look like you?
Yeah, man. So many people tell me that. They're like, it looks like both of us, but I've had a lot of people say it looks like me because I guess my nose, I don't know, some of my features are strong.
Okay.
But it looks like, if you really know our face, I think there's an image on the internet where you could see both of our faces. We're going to take some more promo images when we get there, but if you really look at it, it is really both of us.
Right.
Like, it's more my nose, but then my cheekbones, but it's her lips, and then it's, it's her jawline. I mean, we know it because we've seen ourselves and we could.
Right.
But it's really both of us. But yes, it does. You would see a definite resemblance to me.
How long does this project take y'all to do?
We've been working on it. Well, if we count from when it began in 2014.
Oh, right.
But to really start, like, the collaboration has been about a year and a half. And I was in Denmark for 3 months last year, so that's when we really got a chance to even, because it's hard to collaborate on something across
far to see. Right?
Yeah. So when I was there, I was there for 3 months from July until about October. That's when we were really able to solidify our partnership, and so we went through the realizing we're not going to be able to do it for October 1st, and so we went through that. Just because it was difficult to make that decision. And then also, but we did do something that day. We did a talk that day, and we did a libation that day. We cleared the space because we realized that, as I said, it seems serendipitous, but it's a calling. When I say a calling, it means that the ancestors, when you're bringing a spirit back into a body, like rebirthing her in a way, bringing her body back into the physical form, that's a very spiritual endeavor, and we recognize that. We were able to really talk about that as art, because sometimes as artists you're more intellectual, you don't necessarily work with the spirit like that, and we both kind of really understood that what we were doing was also kind of an ancestral calling, and to recognize and acknowledge that.
Denmark was the last place Queen Mary went.
Yeah, she was brought there along with 3 other women,
right.
And men. A lot of people forget about the men,
Right,
there were men brought there as well. The women were, I guess they got more attention because they were women.
Women, right.
And
the role that they played.
Yeah, and the role that they played. And so they were brought there, and then their sentences were commuted, and they were eventually sent back to the Virgin Islands.
Okay.
And they were living legends. They were, especially Queen Mary. Of course, we all know rose to the most prominence. But the other women were living legends. When she came back, she was famous. I mean, she was a legend.
Yes. So when you go in a couple weeks, so this is going to be this is a big thing. Obviously, this unveiling is a big
international. I mean, it speaks to so many histories. So it speaks to, even the Black Panther just came out, and of course, there's a promo image of him seated in that chair. I mean, the same chair that it's a hyper Afrofuturistic version of it, but it's a comment. And also, he's a hero. So what does that mean to embody a hero, right? And it speaks to, of course, other resistance movements like the Black Panther movement. The title of the piece, I Am Queen Mary, is calling into, it's almost anticipating. Imagine what that's going to be like for the average Dane to walk by. I see this oversized black woman. Like, what? You're going to want to know, who is she?
Yeah.
So she's telling you, I am Queen Mary. Like, it's a call and response almost. Like that African tradition of anticipating the question, and she's telling you through her title, I am Queen Mary. And it also makes the person who has to say the title question their relationship to the history.
Okay.
And then, we were also thinking about, the placards, and I think it was in the late 1960s, the sanitation workers who had a strike, and they had those placards that say, "I am a man." You remember those?
Yes.
That was a very famous symbolic image from the civil rights movement. So it's also commenting on that, speaking your humanity into existence.
Okay. So are you a guest speaker or anything during this whole ceremony over there, or?
Yeah, so the day that we're doing it, it's going to be an unveiling ceremony we're not going to have a whole unveil because it's 2.5 stories. So it's not going to be like a cloth coming off or anything like that, but it's going to be, we may do some kind of ribbon cutting. We just have to figure out some of those smaller details, but we're going to have some speakers that day. And then the following day, on April 1st, is when we're going to do a panel at the National Gallery. A more in-depth discussion. And then about the project.
Okay.
And then I think we'll probably be entertaining a lot of, because I think it's probably the first of its kind. It is the first of its kind in Denmark, and definitely probably in larger Scandinavia. I mean, where do you see a picture of a black rebel queen in Europe?
In Europe.
I mean, that's not.
Yeah.
Especially this
That's
conversation
groundbreaking,
when you're thinking about all these sculptures like the Robert E. Lee, what happened in Charlottesville, how that provoked this huge protest about taking down these sculptures. Then the conversation is what happens next. Barack Obama's his conversation was about, instead of or, what about and. Right? And so this is the and. This is the what happens next. Who are we then going to put up? What does that look like?
Right.
Yeah. Whose stories are now going to be told?
Yeah. Okay. You have 2 websites.
Yeah, 3 now if you consider, because we also have a very landing page website for I Am Queen Mary. So we have that, and then my artist website is LaVaughNBelle.com, and then I have another website, the House of Freedom, built for the project that I'm doing. It's another project that I've been working on.
Yeah, we thought that was kind of a unique website name.
Yeah.
How did you come up with that?
Well, so that project is about a little house that I bought in 2011 because I was looking for a cheap studio space as an artist, and I didn't want to rent no place. And I found this, it was advertised for like $39,000 in the real estate book, and I was like, wow, 2 little houses for $39,000.
Right.
And so I went to see the house, and I was like, oh, that's why. Oh my God, it was
a lot of work.
It had crackheads living in it, drug addicts living in it. It had it had a fire. They had burnt down one of the buildings, or burnt it. It wasn't down, but the inside was burnt. I mean, it just needed so much work. It was a very neglected piece of derelict property. And so I bid on it, and then I walked away because it was just, I never done anything like that before. It was kind of too overwhelming.
Right.
But something called me back. I just couldn't forget about it. I drove by one day, and I had looked all boarded up and cleaned up, and I thought somebody bought it. And my feeling was, I felt like I had missed the most important train of my life. That's how I felt when I saw that. I said, oh my God, I can't believe I didn't buy it. Someone else bought it. What am I going to do? Oh my God, how anybody else even sought to do anything with that building?
Right.
So anyway, I had the courage to drive back to see what they were doing. And I realized that it had the St. Croix Foundation board up, clean up sign. I said, oh my gosh, maybe it didn't sell. So I called the realtor, and she told me, no, it didn't sell. And I bought it like 3 days later.
Okay.
But I didn't know why. I didn't know anything about the building until I had a solo exhibition, and historian George Tyson had offered. When I told him, I just bought a studio, he said, really, where? And when I told him, he said, I'm going to do some research for you. I didn't know why he said that. I just said, okay. Then he called me about a week later and said, LaVaughn, I did some research on your house. I'd like to show it to you. So we met. He had a 1-page, just a quick little outline. And the first few lines left me speechless. He said, 1777, the first registered owner, Elizabeth Gabriel, born in Africa. She bought herself out of freedom. And I was like, what?
You see
wow.
that?
In this house? I couldn't,
that?
I was just, it just.
You see that?
And then the next one, same thing, another woman born in Africa. I didn't even know. I said, but I was like speechless.
Yeah.
Seriously, I used to talk a lot. So oh my God, I was so, I just didn't know that history, and I didn't know why. I said, I'm intelligent. I think I'm fairly culturally, knowledgeable. How come we don't know about this?
Yeah.
And I just felt like I had to tell this story. I just wanted to get more people to understand, because it made me see my own building differently when I understood the history. Now, you remember they have, so you asked me about the title. So the title, if you remember, so the building is a part of the larger Free Gut area, or people who were able to buy their freedom.
Right.
And it used to be called a more negative name. It was almost called like the N-word in Danish. It was called Nya Gata.
Gata.
And that's like the equivalent of the N-word in English. So, and then it was later renamed to Free Gut. But, you know, there's that childhood book called The House That Jack Built?
Yeah.
And if you remember how the structure of that story goes, it starts off inside a house, like maybe like a rat, and then the cat eats the rat, and then the man who owns the cat, and then it goes from the inside to the micro to the macro, and then you come out into the community. So I like that structure as a way to think about how this tiny little house in the back streets of Christiansted could think about the larger community and the larger history. So that's part of the title. Also, it's talking, you know, it's a house of freedom built because it is talking about this history of these people trying to get their freedom.
Yeah.
And the reason I say try, because you're like, oh, but I thought they were free. Free, but with many restrictions. A lot of people don't realize they couldn't go here, they couldn't go there, they couldn't drive, the women couldn't wear certain things, the men had to go hunt runaway slaves. I mean, they had so many restrictions on them.
Yeah.
So the freedom was kind of tenuous. And so yeah, the project then you know, I've been working on it for a while. It's had lots of challenges. Times I didn't have money, so I couldn't work on the building at all. I mean, I bought it in 2011 and I moved in for the first time in 2016. So that's how I was working on it for a long time.
Gotcha.
Little by little, when I had money, I'm not so.
So each building is like a showroom for your artwork.
It's really a studio.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's all workspace.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's tiny. There's probably, you know, the footprint of these buildings are all the same. They're usually about 10 to 11 feet wide.
Yeah.
So they're long row houses, right?
Yeah.
So they're not very big.
Yeah.
I mean, I think mine is maybe about 400 square feet.
Yeah.
But it was, in a way, that's why I said it's so serendipitous. It's like the ancestors guide you, because the project delayed. If I had finished it, I wouldn't have been able to include this part. So about a year and a half ago, how we found out the owners is that George Tyson has been doing a project called the African Roots Project, where he's been digitizing a lot of our church records and census records, and that's how you can find and trace your ancestors. You can go online and actually just put in a name and do those. He's been digitizing a database. But mostly it's the census records and property tax records. But he had been doing research on death records for something else. Now, back then, where did most people die? Not in the hospital. They died at home. So the death records also have now some addresses. So he was researching, and he comes across a name, Wilford Jackson. And that is D. Hamilton Jackson's father, who died in my house. And when I heard that, I was just like, so he was super excited when he found out. And, you know, it was just unbelievable. It was like, oh my God, look at that. Somebody who also a Connect to Freedom, who deals with our free press. It was so, that's when I really realized I was guided. I mean,
better know that.
it was just guided. It really wasn't, so that's been a very special project for me. No, that's not a coincidence. That's guided. Yeah.
And to see the fact that you went back twice, 3 times looking at it. So it was something calling, but
it was something calling,
but it manifests.
It did manifest. And so, you know, now, but you know what, I'm glad, because what made it special to me, because, I mean, David Hamilton Jackson is what, our second most famous Virgin Islander, next to Queen Mary or something, or Bodo, you know, the top 3 pantheon. And
which he don't get too much recognition.
He doesn't get enough recognition for what he did. People just, they don't even, oh man, it's awful. This man was but a lot of people don't realize that they had one of the largest labor strikes. That they also decided, you know what, if these people own the plantation, they will always exploit us. They went and bought sugar plantations. A lot of people don't know that about him. I didn't. I learned it through doing this project. And I think I'm glad that I learned about his connection to my house late, because then he would have ended up being the most famous and the most centered in the project. And what was really interesting was just the regular women who were able to buy their free. That's what was the driver. So I'm glad. So now when I finish the documentary, I'll maybe surprise him. You know, I don't know how I'll reveal how he's also part of the house, but I don't want him to be the center.
So are you making you mentioned the word documentary? So are you like videotaping the whole process?
I've been working. I videotaped the renovation. I interviewed tons of neighbors and people who lived currently, and then also who lived in the height of. Freegot had a real. It wasn't nobody. The Hillsiders, you know.
Yeah.
So I interviewed a lot of Hillsiders to talk about that community as well, because they're the ones who are still alive.
Alive
and kind
today.
of
Yeah.
talk about it, and then just other historians and people to talk about. So it's weaving together three stories. It's
Yeah.
weaving together the renovation, the people who lived in and owned my house, and then the larger macro story about the neighborhood and what happened and why is it derelict now and abandoned. And
But nothing about you and what you're doing as far as your art goes? I mean, none of that's incorporated?
not really. No, it's really focusing on. I mean, there's tons of. I mean, I had lots of images of me sweeping, painting. It's a lot of renovation. How I'm featured is as a person renovating the house.
Okay.
Not so much as an artist.
Okay.
Yeah, it's more as someone who's renovating a house.
Yeah.
Because I really, a lot of people, they say, oh gosh, I would love to do something like that, but they don't know what that
it
means.
takes,
So I really wanted to show what that was.
Was involved, yeah.
Yeah.
Are you trying to build it back original? I mean, to the specs of how it was? Or you
That's a
just
very good question. I learned there's a difference between restoration and renovation. So restoration is where you really try to keep all the original materials and you try to do everything back to the way it was. You need a lot of money to do that. Because, for example, let's say I had a beam and half the beam is corroded or dry rot. There are techniques to be able to strengthen the beam and to fix it, but that might take a worker 2-3 days of paying somebody to do that. But then I could go buy a new one. So which one are you going to do? It depends on your budget.
Yeah.
It depends on your mission and your goals.
Yes.
And so that's what I had to constantly deal with. There were some things that I did not have the resources to do a
keep the
restoration.
relation.
I didn't.
Yeah.
Yes.
So some of them I had to renovate, which would mean to take out some of the materials and put in new. And a lot of restorations are kind of a mix between two, but really restorations try to keep everything that's
like
there. And I did take out a lot and I had to put back new. I did. I kept it to look the way it was, but I couldn't spend,
It was expensive,
4 days on trying to save
Just
one
save
beam.
one beam,
I
right,
couldn't.
right.
Yeah.
Got you.
Yeah.
The labor cost was not. I wasn't able to do that.
Okay. And your other website is just more featured of your art, the things that you've done?
Yeah, so my artist website is based on my name, LaVaughNBelle.com, and that's more like, it's a platform site, so it's almost a portfolio. You could see the kinds of work that I do. So yeah, it's more of a portfolio type of website. I don't, like people sometimes, do you sell your work on your website? And it's like, no, you have to write to me and ask me if you want to, if you're interested in purchasing. And people do.
Okay.
So yeah, that's usually, and then, a lot of times if you've never bought art, it seems very mysterious, and a lot of artists do not
advertise like that.
post their price, because that's part of the
mystique.
Yeah, you don't do that. You ask someone privately, like, okay, what do I have to do? And a lot of people don't realize, you can do a payment plan. I mean, there are many ways. You don't always. A lot of people don't realize that there's that option as well.
Yeah.
And I have different price ranges as well.
Yeah, art is like one of those things that you look at something and what I see, Soup may not see it.
Definitely.
It's just
the value is bestowed in it's complex factors. It's not just like, well, how long did it take you to do that? Because somebody could do zhu, and that's 50 grand, and it's a piece of art. So it's a combination of things. It's like the showing and the exhibition experience of the artist. How significant is their work in terms of other things? Is there something innovative about it? It's what kind of exposure and who's been writing about them, what kind of collections are their work being collected. It's many factors that come into the price. It's not just, and it's not regional either. A lot of artists think like, oh, well, I live here, so my price has to reflect the price here.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm an artist in the world, so... Yeah, it's not based on just what prices are in the Virgin Islands, and I don't change it from the Virgin Islands to if I'm selling in Copenhagen. It's one price.
It's one price.
Yeah. What showcasing have you been doing lately?
Well, last year was a really unique
year. Are you a part of that Art Thursdays that happens here in Christiansted?
Well, the first year I had my studio, I did, but I thought, I can bring people up to that site.
Yeah.
To expand the Art Thursday, because it tends to center around Strand and Coventry Street.
Yeah.
But people it was hard to get people to come up there.
Yeah.
I had to really advertise a lot, and people wouldn't want to walk. They would, it's too that big.
Yeah,
You know,
it's
they
a
would
little
think
off
it
the
was,
path, yeah.
you know, so they would drive, and then they couldn't figure out where it was, and you know, because a lot of people don't even come back there.
Yeah.
Right,
Really.
definitely.
So I realized that that's not, and then I would have to always keep part of my studio as a showcase, which
Yeah.
I didn't like
Want
that. I
that.
wanted to really just
Just
focus
a
on a
work.
workspace.
Right.
Mm.
So I chose to stop participating. So now when people want to come see my work, you know, it's usually they call me up and they say I'd like to make an appointment, and that's fine.
You just go
and then
open
you
up the
just come
doors.
up and you come in and see what I'm doing. But I, you know, or I'll bring out the work. Like I just finished an exhibition at Peach Can Gallery, which is a new gallery that opened up on Strand Street. So I just showed about 7 oil paintings.
Okay.
I did that, and then
Is that the one you were telling me? I think when we first started talking, you were telling me that you had some stuff.
yeah, that's where.
Okay.
Mhm. It just closed last week.
Okay. Forgive me. I told you I think I was going to come down there, and I completely forgot.
Yeah, but then I, you know, but I've been showing a lot off island.
Okay.
So I showed
So do you just pack up your stuff and just ship it with, you know, $2 million worth of insurance?
you know, most carriers will not insure art
Oh, really? Okay.
because art can be
Yeah.
very expensive. So they usually don't. They may insure a small amount, but they're not going to insure it to the full value.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
You have
so-
to get a separate insurance.
Insurance
for
from that.
Okay.
FedEx is not insuring something for $20,000.
Yeah.
Because
You gotta get
think
lawyers.
about it. Yeah, I mean, if it gets scrapped, I mean, it's very.
Which is too much headache and
And then also the
technicalities
appraisal,
and-
like how do you, so it's
Right, how you,
it's
how
val-
you put
the
a price
value
on the
again,
value.
right. So it's also, I mean, you know, you have these artists millions of dollars, so is FedEx going to pay millions of dollars because the thing got damaged? I
Yeah.
mean, so there's usually a separate insurance that has to go with that. But yeah, you have to, you know, I learned a lot last year because I was shipping a lot of work off island, and I learned a lot about how to properly package and ship your, especially far distances. You know,
Okay.
I was showing in the Museum of the African Diaspora in San Francisco, and then I had several shows in Denmark where I had to send off work.
So you're there, and there's these different studios, and people are, you're just sort of, you know, I guess in a sense being Vanna White and showcasing your art, and people are asking questions, and you're just
No. I mean, their place. I'm not even there at the exhibit. I show
Just-
my work. It's
yeah,
not
she
me.
just-
It's
yes,
the
yeah.
work.
She
Is that
had
what you
to be
meant? Like
there.
I'm there going, this is my piece?
Right.
Well, I mean, when
Like a
if people
showcase?
have questions, you're there to sort of answer that.
No.
No.
Oh, okay.
No, I mean, art,
Speaks for
For me-
itself.
yes, in addition to other things. Like
Okay.
there are ways that curators and institutions create the conversation. Sometimes they have to do it through text. Sometimes they do it through audio. Sometimes they do it, in addition, they'll have people do tours. They're called docents, the people who will talk to you about the work.
Okay.
But usually, it doesn't matter what it is. Anything that you look at can speak and and communicate something.
Yeah.
So as an artist, that's what you're trying to
Doing
do.
the
You're
right.
putting together something that hopefully will communicate.
Okay.
And what you may have in your mind, what you're doing, is not necessarily what you will see, and that's the beauty of art.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's what makes it art and not illustration.
Yeah.
Art and not didactic.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Yeah.
not writing. It's something else. It has
Expression.
the metaphor is much more open.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
my
broader.
And broad, yeah. Like
Yeah.
you'll see something, I'll see something. You know, there's more layers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You met anybody famous? Any artists?
You know, I met the Queen of Denmark.
Okay.
Yeah. But that was an interesting. I mean, of course, you're meeting artists, famous artists, all the time. You know, but that experience of meeting the Queen of Denmark was interesting. I was showing me and the same other artist that I'm working with, Jeanette Ehlers. We were invited to show at the Christianborg Palace. So what they were doing, it's a palace, and what they were doing was they were gonna bring out a lot of the furniture that came from the Virgin Islands that was in like the Governor von Scholten mansion and things like that. They were bringing out a lot of the furniture and some other artifacts and things like that. And then they asked some artists to insert into that exhibit. And we both had a lot of concerns because it is a palace. I mean, it's speaking to the monarchy. The monarchy is who started the colonial project here. And, you know, so we were kind of wondering, like, how are you, our work contests and resists that. How are we going to insert into that space? Will our work get lost in that space? You know, we had some concerns. And what was the angling of this exhibition, too? Was it celebrating the monarchy or was it challenging it? Was it being critical? Like, what?
Right.
What was
the
the
forum? What was it?
So, you know, we were told, and the framing was that our work would be allowed to speak in what it was, and that the framing was it couldn't criticize the monarchy, but it could be critical, which it was. And the reason I say couldn't criticize, because the queen, those were her rooms. So, I mean, it was, so that was, the piece that I did was, I've been doing these paintings dealing with Cheney, where I take the fragments and I blow them up and piece them together in these large paintings. And it kind of talks about the fragmentation of our Caribbean identity, but how we've tried to restore it and piece it together and create something new. And, I had always thought, wow, I've been doing stuff based on paintings, based on actual ceramics and pottery, but I'm doing it in another medium of painting. And then I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to be able to actually do something with pottery? So I was able to work with the Royal Copenhagen, which is one of the oldest and most famous luxury brands of fine pottery. And so they commissioned me to do a project, and then I was able to do my own. So I did something else for them, which was the Harold Prize. So the Harold Prize is, it's given every year by the Queen of Denmark, well, by the university, but the Queen actually gives it to you. It's a porcelain owl. And they invite and commission artists to do that every year. And then this year, before the centennial, they invited me as the artist from the Virgin Islands to do it.
Okay.
And so that I did, and then because I was working doing that, I was able to finagle to do another project, which they sponsored basically.
Okay.
And that was what I showed. So I basically created plates, but on the Cheney theme.
Yeah.
Okay.
Using their materials and their factory.
Put it together.
And so that was what was being displayed in the palace.
Okay.
And the Queen, she is an artist herself, and so she requested to speak to the artists that had participated. So we had about a 20-minute sit-down meeting with her.
Okay.
And when she first met me, first I was standing there waiting with someone else. It's very all security, and they bring you in, and then you wait. And her lady in waiting had said, "Are you the artist that has been doing? The Queen has been so fascinated with what you've been doing." And when I sat down, she's the same thing. She said, the first thing she said to me, "Are you the artist that did those plates?" I said, "Yeah." She said, she called it the old name, the colonial name. She called it the porcelain factory should put your plates into production. I said, from your mouth to their ears.
Let's go.
But I knew that would never happen. Yes. And the reason I say that, not because...
What do you mean never happen?
Because that is over 250-year-old factory that has their own designs. Cheney is not just Danish. It's English, Dutch, German. We have plates. It's all the colonial plates that we find. Yes. And I was taking that and making a hodgepodge and putting it together. They have a very pristine, I mean, those patterns are, hundreds of years old. They don't. So I knew what I was doing was kind of disrupting what they did. So I knew that wouldn't have been something that, and then, it's a money, it's a commercial. It's not actually even produced or owned by Denmark anymore. It's now a company, an international brand that they produce in Thailand. So, it's the shift in focus. It's a little different. But I was very grateful for the experience. I learned a lot. And that was interesting talking to her, because when I asked, I asked her, for example, like, have you ever been to the Virgin Islands? Because she's in her late 70s, I think maybe early 80s. And she said she had in 1976. And it was unofficial. It was like a personal vacation that she had taken with her family. They were young kids, she said, at the time. And she went sailing through the BVI, and she came to St. Croix. And she said what had struck her the most was, she'd heard from her mother that there was so much of like the Danish history here, but she'd never seen it. And so she was very surprised to see like the Danish names in the streets and like in the architecture and stuff. And I said to her, and also in the furniture we had, because she had lent her furniture, her personal collection, to be in the exhibit. And I told her, for example, the Kruger mahogany beds are world renowned. Sometimes they go on auction for as much as $40,000. They're very pristine and intact ones. And she said, yeah, sometimes we have them for auction here. She said, yeah, actually I sleep on one every night. That's why it's not in the exhibit. And I looked at her, I could not, I said, and she's like, I was in shock when she said that, because it was two layers to that. What does that mean for the current Queen of Denmark to still sleep on a bed that's built and carved by enslaved African hands today? I was like, what it meant literally for the monarchy to sleep on a bed made by us.
Yes,
I was shocking. And then also the sleep. Because I don't think she realized what she just told me either. The way she said it, you know,
Right,
it's like,
right.
hey, she
Yeah,
thought
so
it was-
matter of factly.
So almost like a chuckling, because she said, and that's why it's not, because I still use it. She said, I sleep in it. That's why it's not in the exhibit.
Right.
And it was so.
It was deep.
It was deep.
Yeah.
It
So
was
matter
deep.
of factly, you know, it was just kind of a, you know,
was
just
deep.
every day, just an everyday thing for her.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And then, you know, she there's a lot of they have a lot of our stuff, you know. I mean, Denmark took all of they took things that weren't even theirs. They took our petroglyphs. What are they doing with our petroglyphs?
Right.
They have them in their museums. They took everything.
Yeah.
And so, you know, my work also speaks a lot to what does that mean for us to create our own identity based on the fact that a lot of the archives are there. And so we've had to create our history based on other things, through song, through oral traditions. The architecture is another form of archives, and that's why the fact that we have some of these amazing buildings and we don't really take care of them the way that we should. I think it's a lot because we don't really understand our own history and
The
what
history.
they
Our
are.
value
We don't
about-
see the
yeah.
value in them.
Yeah.
So a lot of my work is hoping to get people to see the value.
Okay.
Yeah.
Soup. Any final questions for our wonderful guest tonight?
Um,
We're gonna have to have her back, man. She's like, got a lot of knowledge, a lot of interesting, fun stuff to talk about. We'll have you back for sure. Can do a part 2.
Yeah, great. You know, you should have me back after
after the sculpture is up.
Yeah, I would
Okay.
love to come back and kind of share because, you know, I'll be honest, I think for us too, it will be so. We've been working on, and it's a different thing to see it 50 centimeters because that's all we've seen. And we've seen parts, like you'll see that's the head,
Yeah.
Right.
but it's not even painted yet. I
Yeah.
mean, it's still like, for us to actually see it.
Yeah. So you haven't seen the final product yet?
No.
No.
Okay,
no,
okay,
no.
okay,
It's
okay.
still being produced. The
Okay.
final parts are, you know, I think they're probably going to start assembling by the end of the week, and then the base is still being worked on. I mean, it's
So
like,
they kind of run out of time, aren't they?
it's, to be honest, we're a little freaked out by that. To be honest, to be really honest,
They
we're a
gonna
little
do it. They
freaked
gonna
out
make-
by
they
that
gonna make
because
the
it's
time.
like
They
they're
gonna make the
behind.
time.
It's
Yeah.
behind, but you know they commit. They said they
They
will
gonna
make
make
it
the time.
happen.
Yeah.
They gonna make the
Danes
time.
are very.
Yeah.
So we're hoping they will keep to their word.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're pretty much going to be working about 20 hours a day for
A
the
day
next
to get it
3
completed.
weeks,
Yeah.
Right,
Okay.
right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we want to thank you for coming on our show tonight. It's been a lot of interesting knowledge and
Thank you.
a lot of fun stuff. The other thing I meant to say to you too that today also is International Women's Day.
too.
Yes,
right.
March
it is.
8th?
Thank
Yes,
yeah. So
yes.
that
And shout out to all the women of the world.
All the women of the
Continue
world.
working hard and going after your dreams and your aspirations, you know? But Soup, any final words?
LaVaughn, I want to thank you for coming on. I wish you much success.
Thank you.
Rastafari
Thanks for having
lives.
me, yeah.
One perfect love. You're welcome.
Everyone love, thank you.
Yes, I.
Yeah, I'm glad to say one perfect love is our prayers and his blessings. When you put it all together, you get one perfect love, man. So on that note, I just want to say real quick that this is the It's Your Perspective Talk Show every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We'll be back next week with more shows and more fun stuff. We do have a telephone number, 340-201-9005. On that note, we're out. You guys have a good weekend.
Say my place, am I coming hard?